I don't think I can hear you. Yeah. Or maybe it's me. Let me try.
Not yet.
Okay.
Good morning,
Now
speaker
we got it.
setup.
You should be able to hear me now.
Yeah, we can.
All good?
Good.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. And we should have everybody closed, but Holly didn't make it back in here with us.
Good morning,
All
speaker setup.
You should be able to hear me now.
We can.
Good? All right. Good morning. Well, all kinds of things are just not working right here.
He just popped up.
Ah, there we go. Sometimes the best laid plans just don't quite work out.
Lenny, did you have to rejoin? No, okay.
No, I didn't.
Great. I'll make a note. I know it's personal, Jason. I'm going to put you in a
Yeah.
green room and then kick you out of the meeting. One way to eliminate people from a panel. Trying to keep it with just the smart people, Alex, you see?
I shouldn't be
Weed
here
out the
then.
crazy. So not
There
true.
we go. And now I've got all the extra sound taken care of. Man, I had all kinds of weird stuff going on this morning. Can you guys hear me okay now? All right. Yeah, Lenny, it's
Okay.
showing you still in the green room. I'm glad you made it out.
You didn't know you were going to escape the room this morning, right? Like,
I
was
did
just
not
thinking
know.
that.
Yeah, right?
Team building.
It was funny because it popped up and it said the green room was ending. And you just think some of those messages, like when a breakout room ends, you're going to get pulled back to the main. And then I'm
Right.
sitting there and I was talking to you, Lenny, and I'm like, okay. And then it's just silent. I'm like, huh, where's the Zoom window gone? Uh-oh, I'm not in a meeting. I'm just talking to myself. The cats didn't seem surprised though.
Let's see here. Make sure that everybody is able to get in.
Edie, I was going to say, that's an awesome bookcase behind you. That one's real, right? That's not your...
Yeah,
amazing.
people ask me that all the time. They're like, is that a picture? I'm like, no, there's actually real books in here.
I love it. I love it.
IKEA, the Billy shelf.
Okay.
Practical and affordable.
And I've had the same discussion about bookshelves that I've had about pets, as if you come home with one more, then we don't live together anymore. I have an entire upstairs that's full of bookcases.
Yeah, this is it. Like, I have to purge. Like, if I buy more, then I have to get rid of some. So,
Yeah. I've been told that too. Take a book, leave a book program. That's kind of my deal now.
Yeah.
Or library. I was strongly encouraged to use the library. Hey, Hector. Hey, Steve.
Hey, or as they say sometimes down south, the library.
Yeah.
I don't say
I'm very
that.
familiar
I'm
with
just
it.
saying I've heard it.
Where I grew up in Texas is one of the few places in the city that had air conditioning. So a lot of people were highly well read.
Oh, man, that was grandma's house. Me being a Floridian grew up without air conditioning. So
Wow. Yeah.
it's funny how I hear people here go, I could never live without air conditioning. I'm like, man, we had a concrete floor, no air conditioning. It was fine. We made it. And now I'm in my 60s and I'm still living. So,
Right?
Life is good.
I grew up without it. I mean, we didn't even have central air in the house. I had a window unit in my room that I was occasionally allowed to turn on. And that was probably a fighting point. That's because I had a health condition that led to that.
We fought over the oscillating fan. So sometimes my brother didn't get it. My brother and I had trundle beds. So one bed pulled out and we had a 900 square foot house. I always say that today, and people go, "Is that small?" I went, "Well, that's less than half of one of my 3 floors here in Alpharetta." So
Yeah.
somehow 5 of us made it. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And somehow all the siblings are close today. So
No, you had no choices.
somehow we were so close to each other, we knew all our faults and what buttons to push and not push.
You had to work
Well,
it
we had a
out.
pretty big we had a pretty big house when I was growing up, but we still knew how to push the buttons. We found them real quick. Oh, good
I
morning,
grew-
everybody.
I grew up with 6 sisters in one bathroom, so yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
Yep.
when I finally had
You've
my own,
seen it all.
so, when I finally had my own bathroom and actually put something on the counter, then woke up the next day and it was still there. I'm like, wow, this is possible.
Well, I'm important. How did you even get to the bathroom with that many sisters?
Well, as I was walking in the bathroom, you always heard someone say, "How long you gonna be in there?"
Uh-huh.
I could literally once I joined the working world, I could literally walk in my apartment, take a shower, shave, and be in a suit in 15 minutes.
Wow.
I got pretty good at that.
All right. So let's dig in here. Let's start talking to some folks. Of course, we got our panel jumping in here. Does everybody know Randy? Let's Randy, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody that doesn't know? Well, of course, now I got your back to me. I caught you as you were standing up. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are that doesn't know you, and what has your attention these days.
My name's Randy. I come from an engineering, a chemi process background. Got into IT. Have a business master's and some UX and agile training. So I'm kind of a process systems person from, kind of a perspective and looking to move in the product world. I think I've been around products per se, kind of on the outskirts or not necessarily identifying myself as one. So that's what attracted me here. As far as my attention, it's, I think there's a lot going on in the world, both in product and elsewhere. So nothing in particular, just trying to I don't know if anybody, ChatGPT has come up in this group a while. I don't know if anybody caught the 60 Minutes segment on there, and they had the person.
No, I did not.
They had the person from Microsoft, and basically whoever the interviewer was, it was the one woman on there. She asked ChatGPT to give her a bio of herself, and it got the wrong network she was at for 20 years. So she asked the person, she goes, "Well, how can we trust this if it gives wrong answers?" And basically his was, "Well, that's kind of what it is right now at this stage." So again, it's almost, we think of it as artificial intelligence, but maybe it's just, maybe it's more human than we think. It makes mistakes and we just have to kind of learn. So I don't know, that was kind of enlightening. So I continue to be enlightened by all these discoveries around this new thing that, we hear the best of, but now we're hearing some of the fallout. But I'm not saying that's a focus, but it's obviously something I try to be aware of.
Yeah.
Why is there no forgiveness for that? I misspeak all the time. I never remember names and I always say the wrong person's name. So that seems fair.
Maybe it's more human than we think. I don't know. It's interesting though. It's a continuing saga, that's for sure.
At least it didn't give you a report where it said that woman that was on TV in that place about the thing.
Well, it's probably more algorithmic, less machine learning, and the algorithm's wrong. I've built over the last few years an AI engine, particularly around chemistry and fuel. So we've just patented our digital petrochemist, and without a lot of data in there, and it's hard to really then perform machine learning and then train it and make sure that you've got new data that's better. And then secondly, the algorithm can just be wrong. Now, luckily, we're dealing with something scientific, right? So we're not trying to determine someone's work habits or where they're from, but still that algorithm could be wrong. We are basing it on a combustion model. We're digital twinning an engine, a combustion.
Yeah. So my understanding of machine learning, at a very base level, is you have the algorithm and you also have this data source that says these are right and wrong conclusions. and then basically say, okay, which engine gives you the right and wrong conclusion, which I used to do with API and thermodynamics. I had all these models. It's like, okay, which ones are good with this combination of chemicals and this pressure and temperature range? Then we published that. So then the customers would use, okay, which model do we choose, whichever we're using? And I think that kind of parallels what ML is. But the one interesting tidbit on that conversation, 60 Minutes, was every once in a while, the chat GPT would give you some trivia because it's like, while I was processing whatever. And the one piece of trivia it gave was, it said 3% of the ice on the Arctic ice cap is penguin urine. Well, then they went and researched, and penguins don't urinate. So it was like, where the hell did this come from, And then and basically one of the other people in this piece said, we don't fully understand how this does what it does. And I think that's kind of some of the crux of it. We have this tool that, okay, yeah, we by trial and error, we discovered this algorithm for this data set works. But how do we know, it will work on? But it's like I say, it's an ongoing saga. But I just found it really interesting, and again, it's coming back down to earth to some degree.
Well, Randy,
Yeah,
I'll tell you that not everything you read on the internet is true, even by a bot.
I've been using Chat GPT a lot lately, and you're right. It is highly. You cannot just immediately assume that any answer or response that it gives you is factually accurate, but I find it very useful for frameworks. So I've used it for a lot of research and brainstorming and planning and thinking, because it allows me to explore and correct. And if you actually use it in a chat format, one of these days I'll actually demonstrate kind of some of how I've used it all. But I've asked it to create comparison charts for me between several different things, and it'll create criteria to compare them by. Now, then I still have to validate that those are the correct criteria, and then I have to validate that it's giving me accurate comparisons. But at the same time, it's done a lot of foundational work for me to help me unlock my own thinking. And the power of Chat GPT, I think, is really the operator of it. Because I kind of realized this as I'm going through and asking it to refine its responses and giving it other things to add and layer into a report that it's drafting for me. And then I'm still going to have to go back and rewrite everything. It's just a faster way to do a very rough draft and create a framework for lots of different things for me. It is not the end of the work. It's not the definitive source, but it's a good helper.
But Jason, if you're giving it something pretty finite, right? Well-defined, certain very specific buckets, it can do things then really neat. It can automate things that would take you a lot longer. But obviously, when people are throwing out some broad question where there's not a lot of boundaries, that's when it gets the answers can be a little squishy.
Yep. I've done it. I've used it to do a few things. One of the things that I had it do, I've been playing around with somebody was talking about creating bios, and of course, right now they're having a problem. And I've actually paid for the premium subscription on ChatGPT, so I'm still having a problem accessing it right now. But I would give it a few short sentences about a person that they had given me. They didn't have a bio for one of these events, so I said, answer these 5 questions. And then I pasted those 5 questions into Chat GPT and said, create a speaker's bio based on this information. Created a pretty nice little speaker's bio. Holly played with it a little bit and had a lot of fun with cats. And that was pretty neat. I've also done, yesterday I was playing around with having it assemble a comparison matrix of different product management training courses, where it came back and it gave me a whole list of product management training courses, their prices, where to go find out more about them. And it was unable to pull in customer reviews for me, but it gave me kind of a foundation. Okay, I can go validate this information about each of these courses and build out a bigger kind of a helper for people who are asking about this information on a regular basis. And there's 1,000 articles out there about product management training courses, but I was just kind of putting it through its paces to create a comparison.
And isn't that the essence of the, I don't know if everybody's here familiar with the double diamond model of, design thinking. So again, we go broad, then we go narrow. So we go again. We obviously you want to limit, like Steve says, and give some boundaries. It gives you a bunch of stuff. Then you basically then validate and then kind of fine tune and either pitch or move on to the next step. So, and again, a lot of us are one side or other. We're very logical. We're very creative. And if you're logical but not as creative, obviously this provides you with some type of creative method to move forward. But no, it's interesting. Like I say, it's a saga, and it's actually Time Magazine had a cover story on the whole recent history of it. People might want to check that out. It was last week's cover story. But
Yeah. We've
I
actually
think
started
it-
exploring use cases this last week of just scenario. I'm getting more interested in scenario planning and how we might be able to leverage this technology for proactive decision making and scenario planning. But it's all pretty much brand new to us. I mean, I've done a little bit of machine learning with supervised and unsupervised classification algorithms, but this is like whole new world. So look forward to experimenting.
So, hey, Matt, welcome back. Good
Yeah,
to see you, man.
I know you guys are nerding out at whatever time it is. Thanks.
It's
Glad to
a
be
little
back.
earlier for you than it is for us. Why don't you introduce yourself to those who don't know you and tell us what has your attention?
Okay, cool. So I try to be a regular here. I enjoy the coffee and the company of those who brew it. And I'm a product director for a software as a service company for the public transportation sector. So critical infrastructure, primarily airports, large airports, big ones that do a lot of business, like Atlanta, like New York, like LAX, and so forth, as well as smaller ones like the one I'm working with right now out in Truckee, California. There's also a lot of work we're doing with public transit agencies too. So primarily I oversee a team of associate product managers and a product manager. I have 3 primary products under my direct responsibility, probably close to 10 total. And I rely on my team to help with all that because it's a lot. And love coming to this group on a weekly basis if I can. Sometimes, life gets in the way, but I think we all learn to deal with that. So
I think you get the prize for being active in the highest number of product management communities of anyone that I know. I see you everywhere. I see you out there in Dan Olson's stuff. I see you out there in Felix Watson's stuff. I see you. I know you were really active in John's webinar that he did with Holly a couple of weeks ago. You were just out there, and you take it all. And what I love about you, Matt, and thank you for being here, is you get out there, you take in a ton of information and perspective, you put it to work, and you come back into Product Coffee Premium. I see you do it here all the time. Say, here's something I learned, and here's how I used it, and here's the difference that it made. So you're learning things and sharing things, and that's the essence of what we're trying to do here. So thank you so much for your contributions to this community, Matt.
yeah, I love doing that. I think that's what this is about, is bringing it back to all the folks here. So
really glad you're here.
After 50 years of not reading a book, Matt Matina was the one that kind of swayed me to start reading books more consistently.
Yeah, I found a book the other day, Manish, and I think it said return to Atlanta City Public Library, courtesy Manish, something like that. So you got to stop leaving your books everywhere.
Working on it.
He's the last checked out name on the card of so many books that I found.
It had like 13 stamps on it, so it was overdue and unlucky. Sorry,
That's
Manish.
awesome. So, hey, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name's Jason. We do this every week. We get together with a bunch of product people and we talk about product stuff and what has our attention right now. And we'd like to introduce new people every chance we get as well. We're going to introduce Eric here in a moment. It's Eric's first time here, and Dima's joining us for the first time. Dima, I'm not going to call on you, or if it's Dima, whichever. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I won't call on you unless you turn your camera on. But if your camera's on, I would love to invite you to introduce yourself to everybody here and just get to know everyone. And I saw a couple of cameras go off real quick, so that's okay. Let's hear from Anthony Cora. Welcome back, Anthony. Why don't you say hi?
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Anthony Cora, Senior PM at Lowe's. I work on recommendation and AI stuff at Lowe's. Jason's been the only reason I come. Jason invites me to this is so he can kind of get a discount at Lowe's, but I'm kind of holding the fort here and saying no. What's on my mind right now? Just how to read more books. I have successfully deleted all kinds of apps that I scroll on, LinkedIn, Reddit, from my phone. I'm trying to figure out how to fill that time with books now. Work in progress.
Well, if you're trying to read more books, I'm going to use that as a segue. We're starting our newest book club this week on Friday. If you haven't already got it, you can grab a copy of Product Roadmaps Relaunched, you can go over to productcoffee.com/book club. If you sign up there, we'll add you to our book club group. This is free. And what we do is we'll get together every week with Manesh is one of the leaders of that. Allison, I don't know if Allison's on here yet, but Allison and Manesh and Brandy Reeves lead our book club. Every week, we're going to be reading Product Roadmaps Relaunched by our friend Bruce McCarthy and C. Todd Lombardo, and are really looking forward to going through that book. Would love to have you join us. Go to productcoffee.com/book club, sign up for that. And especially you, Anthony, it's a book to put on your list, and you can read it with a bunch of friends. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Let's see, who else are we going to jump over? Who else do we want to jump over here? Hey, let's hear from next week. Next week, we're going to have Diane Bowman is going to lead us through a discussion on the customer spotlight and how she brings information back to her teams. Let's Diane, why don't you jump in here and introduce yourself?
Her mic is not connected.
Yep. Yeah. We can't hear you, Diane.
All right, let's see if that
There we go. Yes.
So, hey, everybody, I'm Diane Bowman. I'm the Director of Product Strategy at MetaStreams, and I'm going to be doing a session on Customer Spotlight, as Jason mentioned, helping us really connect with our development teams and other teams across our organizations that really don't quite get the user experience, right? We have lots of tools that we use, and we're going to talk about those and how you can integrate those into an easy way for them to consume that and really resonate with them. So I hope you'll join us. What's on my mind is getting my materials ready for that session, as well as seems like today I've got a gazillion meetings. So trying to work on that.
Excellent. Cool. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for being here, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts as we go through today's panel discussion as well. Let's see here. Oh.
Diane, it's called decline.
Power tips. Hey, Meeling, why don't you come say hello? Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Hey, everyone. Mei-Ling Arunaroth, product manager at Delta Airlines. I came from SalesLoft, so you might have heard Butler mention me a few times. Worked very closely with Butler, who's awesome. And I work on the messaging/chat tool over at Delta Airlines. So you're a customer of Delta and you need support, you can either call or message us. So I'm over that along with a secondary Scrum team. So there's kind of like two product managers running the virtual assistant bot, and as well as the platform that the specialists use to answer customers' questions.
That is awesome. And that kind of falls right into our discussion around the discussion we were having, kind of the ad hoc discussion we were having before you got on. We were talking about various AI driven chat bots, especially Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And I know I use the assistant there in the Delta app quite a bit. And there's some stuff that's obviously kind of very rules driven. I'm wondering, how much are you blending the rules driven stuff versus machine learning and AI driven stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we can dig deeper into it later, but we are using a rules-based system right now for routing certain messages, like say Diamond Medallion members go straight to a different queue, or if it's an IROP, what we call irregular operations, that changes the rules as well. But we're just dipping our toe into AI right now in terms of like just reading words that come in, and we call those intent-based conversations. So if they're talking about baggage, we know the words that go under baggage and then figure out what to do with those. And do we have a bot that can then pick that up, or, just building different bots and things like that. So it's really interesting.
It's an exciting time to be working in that space. I got to say, I'm a little bit jealous. So.
We might actually explore using Chat GPT. We'll see.
It's interesting.
Cool.
It's interesting that the term you used there was intense, because I started building Alexa skills back in about 2015, right when they first came out with it. And of course, they have the whole notion of intense and utterances. And
yes.
Now I know that's very structural and it's very algorithmic based, and there's no machine learning in that, although there could be. But it's the same verbiage, right? Intense and utterances and things like that. So it's amazing how this voice world uses a lot of the same definitions and constructs.
Definitely.
Well, thanks. Good to have you back, Mailing.
Thank you.
And let's jump over to our first time visitor. Is it Dima or Dima?
Hi, all. It's Dima.
Dima, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Checking this. So that's what's on top of my mind now, is checking out what this community is about. I most recently was at Calendly as a senior product manager for their mobile apps and browser extensions. So yeah, just wanted to check out and see what you guys have to say and participate in the conversation. So thanks for hosting.
Well, we are glad to have you here. I hope you enjoy your time with us and come back again and again and again. We have a lot of fun together, and the purpose of this community is to help each other learn more, be better, have more impact in our organizations. Sometimes find the next great opportunity, sometimes entrench ourselves where we are right now and rise up within the organization that we're in. So we are glad to have you here. And yeah, you'll get a email from me with a Calendly link here in a little bit too. So cool. Well, welcome. So let's start shifting gears. I want to get into our panel here in just a moment. But before we do, I've got a couple things that I really like to talk through for a moment and kind of share with everyone to make sure that we cover off and give some credit to a lot of folks who come together to make this weekly event possible. We do a lot of stuff with Product Coffee, from the book club to these weekly sessions. Literally every week we're learning about a different topic together and digging in on a different topic together. So for those of you who haven't been here before, my name's Jason Brett. And we started Product Coffee back at the kind of near the beginning of the COVID pandemic to bring product people together in a virtual way, besides sitting around and going to some virtual conference on Zoom. We said, let's have a bunch of virtual coffee chats where we'll just talk about product stuff. And that grew into a community of about 1,200 people right now that you're a part of. And we want to keep growing it and keep finding ways to create value for people. And we do that with the help of some amazing sponsors. And I'm going to put some links to all of their websites here in the chat in just a moment. But I'd love everybody to check them out. And I don't see we've got so Method is our platinum sponsor. They've been here from our diamond sponsor. They've been here from the very beginning. And for those of you who have gotten some of our swag, Method has provided a lot of great Product Coffee swag, like this shirt. And we're in the process of getting a new batch of that. And I'm going to be sending out a poll to our premium members for some things that you might like to have in a swag store for Product Coffee, as well as some of our giveaway stuff. So we want to thank Method. Method is a digital agency that helps with the strategy and execution of delivering great software and digital transformation in enterprises. one of our guests today is a former colleague of mine from Method, and he is we have had quite a few conversations about digital transformation and how to really guide organizations from an older state of mind with a lot of manual systems into a highly efficient modern operation and do a lot around modern product transformation. We also have to thank Genuine Parts Company, who's hiring a ton of product managers. If you go over to productcoffee.com/GPC, you will find that there are probably right now about 30 product management roles open and a whole bunch more. I was talking to one of the directors at Genuine Parts the other day. And if you're not familiar with them, they own the Napa brand of auto parts stores. They're going through a massive transformation right now as well, and bringing modern product transformation principles into Genuine Parts Corporation. And they're looking for smart, experienced product people who can help them in that transition, not just delivering great digital products, but helping them learn how to do great product management. If you're looking for a great company that's over 100 years old, that is looking to modernize itself, check out Genuine Parts, and we want to thank them for their support. Sophion, I don't know if we have anybody from Sophion here, but they just launched some great tools, including a product called acclaimproducts.ai that you can use to connect your product to your KPIs and do a whole bunch of other innovation discovery tasks. And the Product Management University is run by John Mansour, one of our longtime members and friends, and he teaches product managers how to be better product managers. And we may get into that later, but I know that Holly has led some sessions with John as well. Matt attended one of his free workshops a couple of weeks ago. Check out Product Management University and sign up for his free workshops to get to know John and his team, and you will find that they are transformative to your career. Isn't that right, Matt?
After Monday, yes, I can say so. That was a high presentation, and I gotta say it worked.
That's fantastic. And finally, last but not least, featureupvote.com powers our ideas board at productcoffee.com/ideas, where you can make suggestions about the types of content you'd like us to cover and talk about here and vote on other people's suggestions. We really like to have lots of input about what's on your mind and what we can help you with right now. So check out productcoffee.com/ideas. You'll see feature upvote in action, and check them out and thank them for supporting Product Coffee as well. So with that being said, I mentioned just a moment ago before the top of the hour that we're starting our next book club. And we have a Product Coffee book club where we go through great product management reads together. Sometimes they're new. We don't know a whole lot about them. Sometimes they're tried and true, and we're just digging in. Sometimes we take a book off the shelf that everybody's been meaning to read and hadn't gotten to. Excellent. Great. Glad to see it. Perfect. So Product Roadmaps relaunched. We start our book club this Friday. It's going to be mostly a meet and greet and kind of an orientation session about how that's going to work. But you can go over to productcoffee.com/book club. If you're not already on our book club specific mailing list, you can join it there, and we will send you calendar invites to the sessions. And would love to see you starting this Friday. I think it's 10 a.m. Is that right, Manesh?
Yes, sir.
10 a.m. Eastern. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
10 a.m. Eastern.
Cool.
Yes.
Yep. Cool. Excellent. So join us for that read, and we'll have a lot more announcements around that as we go through the next several weeks. But we'd love to have you join us on those conversations and be part of that read. We try not to cover too much and make it too burdensome, but we try to get through the book quickly enough so that we're not spending 2 years on a book. We went through Matt Wallert's Start at the End in about 6 weeks, and I think we're planning about 6 weeks on this one as well.
And I just put this in the chat, but if you don't have the book yet, there is a link to the book on the picture on that page that Jason just mentioned, the productcoffee.com/book club. And if you use that, Jason, right, that you get, whatever.
Yeah, that supports Product Coffee. It's yep. So yeah, hit that link, pick up a copy of that book, and a little bit of your sale will come back. Your purchase will come back to Product Coffee. It's not a lot, but every little penny helps. So, and it doesn't affect the price that you pay. So,
and also, I know it's reading is tough for a lot of people. It was for me. So the sessions alone can add value just by listening to what other people are saying about what they read in the book and triggering the discussion. So there's always value in that as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've been to a couple of different book sessions, well, groups of sessions, and we take notes from everybody's comments. So it gives you a lot of times a different perspective on what you read, or in my case, since I do the audiobooks, so I can knock them out while I'm walking my dogs every day. It helps. Plus the notes help too, because sometimes with the audiobooks, you don't get the visuals. So that helps me too. But it's a good group and a good exchange of ideas, and it forces you to get through the books.
So it doesn't sit on your nightstand or sit there in your unplayed.
Yeah.
I've got so many that I haven't gotten through yet, but when you get that accountability group, you get through it, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you get 5 chapters into it, then life happens, and you look back 2 years later and go, how far did I get? No, it's good.
Yep. So I also want to thanks everybody. Appreciate that, and looking forward to kicking that off. I do want to also call attention to next week. We introduced Diane a little while ago, and Diane Bowman is going to be back with us. We're going to do a little coffee chat around a program that she calls Customer Spotlight that she started about a decade ago at a popular Atlanta startup called Silver Pop, to really bring her voice of the customer work back into the organization so that more people could consume it in really meaningful ways and really start to drive changes in how our teams and our stakeholders perceive the customer interactions with our products, their needs, and their experiences. We're going to talk about that in great detail and give you some suggestions and tips for how you can start a similar program to go with all your discovery and interview efforts that we've been talking about this month, how you can bring that information back into your organization in some really meaningful ways.
Decades, you age me.
I said a decade.
But still.
Diane, don't let him off for that. No.
You're seasoned and experienced.
Sure.
Yeah. And this week, though, we're going to be talking about, last week we talked about different approaches to customer interviews and how you can make sure that you've got a broad toolbox of interview styles and techniques so that you can gather great insights no matter what circumstance or situation that you're in, and you can keep your interviews, your customer interviews, engaging and effective. But all that doesn't really matter if you're talking to the wrong people in the first place. We're going to be talking today with an amazing panel of product and design professionals who have interviewed a ton of customers and have put some great programs in place to ensure that you're actually not just interviewing regularly, but interviewing the right customers and thinking about the right things and applying the right filters and attracting the right people into your program. We're going to jump into that in just a moment. I would like to ask everybody to do a couple of things, though, as we get started. One is we've got a page set up for this session. There's a description to this session that gives a little bit more information. We'll give a little bit more information about some of our panelists. And there's also a link to this very important document. And if you go to productcoffee.com/notes, you will find our notes document for today's session. And what we do at Product Coffee is we have a Google Doc that we ask everybody to jump into. You can put a star on it, save a link to your own Google Drive, and it will be there forever for you. So once again, instead of taking your own private notes, jump into the Google Doc and take notes with everyone. As you hear an insight, as you hear a thought that you want to capture, help capture it for everyone. You can have a discussion right there in comments, right there in the notes, and it'll persist beyond today's session. We also try to copy the chat transcript or the important parts of the chat transcript from this session into that document. You can only get it if you go to the notes document today, because tomorrow we archive it. It's linked to this session. And if you've got it saved off in your drive, then you'll have it forever. So yeah, you got to be here live to get the notes from the session. So jump over there and participate in that. With that said, once again, I want to welcome everybody to Product Coffee. My name is Jason Brett, and we're going to be welcoming an amazing panel today. And I want to just kind of get started with that right now and ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves a little bit. But we're going to start with Alex Sherman, who is a product coach at Kaiser Permanente. Alex, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Nice to see you all. A lot of familiar faces. I am a product coach, like Jason mentioned, at Kaiser Permanente. Like everybody else, they're going through a transformation. So I was actually the first product coach hired on. Now we have a team of product design and engineering coaches that are helping teams, leaders, and executives learn how to work in this new way. So it's like, that's been my jam. So working all the way from the team level up to the leader level. Most of my background is around working from anywhere from size of startups to medium-sized businesses to enterprises. Excited to hear what others have to say on the panel around like, who should we be talking to and why? So I'm excited to learn as well.
Welcome, Alex. So glad to have you back. You've been a great friend of Product Coffee. Glad to have you here. And Anna McFarland, who's product leader at Paylocity, just jumped on my screen. So Anna, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna McFarland. I'm Director of Product Management at Paylocity. We're an HCM company, a human capital management, and I'm over all of our talent products. So that includes like recruiting and onboarding and performance and data insights and surveys. And there's a bunch of products. I think there's 10 or 11 products under me for that. I have a real passion for talking to customers. And I feel like I've been talking it to death lately with my team. So really happy to be here and talk about it with you all as well.
And you've spoken about it on these calls in little bite-sized chunks, and I know you're really passionate about it. And that's why we're so excited to have you here to expand on some of that thinking with our crew here today. So thanks for being here, Anna. And all the way from Chicago, Illinois, let's welcome Eric Rolfson, who's Director of Product Management at Aaron's, which is a big retail chain that a lot of you may know. Eric, excuse me, welcome to Product Coffee. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey, I'm Eric. Yeah, I'm in Chicago. Jason and I used to work together at Method. I was there for about 1.5 years and had been on the Aaron's account and was working with them on transformation around some of their algorithms and kind of a unified experience across all of their channels, and really liked the team I was working with. And so I let myself get poached and go in-house for the very first time in my career. And so I'm about 8 months into that experience, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. We do have a very interesting mindset when it comes to product and a good strategy that we have, which I think is unique. And talking to our customers is really important, and have some cool programs that we have in place to allow us to do that. And excited to be a part of Product Coffee, even though it is still really early for me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I know it's early.
You bet.
I love the visual dissonance that you have there of the big heavy coat on the beach.
Oh no, this is
on the tropical beach.
This is Lake Michigan.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I remember camping on Lake Michigan one time, and I must have been on the wrong part.
Yep.
So good to see you, Eric. Welcome.
Yeah, you too.
And let's jump now to Lainey. I always butcher your last name, Lainey. Arseniagas, right?
Yes. Hi,
Yay!
everybody. Yes. My name is Linnea Arceniegas, and I am a UX researcher for the Home Depot. So I'm in online, so that means I have to talk to customers the whole time. That's actually my job, and I really enjoy it. Every time that I meet with customers, pretty much on a weekly basis, they get kind of like intimidated because they don't want to tell you everything that goes wrong. And I'm like, hey, just tell me. Like, I'm delighted to hear everything that we're doing wrong. And so I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, so nice meeting you.
So glad you could be here. Thanks for joining us. And one more introduction, who needs no actual introduction, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I want to welcome Holly Jewell, who is a big part of the Product Coffee team here as well, and has an amazing history in finance and commerce product management leadership. Holly, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks so much, Jason, and thank you for learning from right, Diane. I've also been doing this for decades. Yeah, so my experience has ranged across a number of different spaces: banking, fintech, and then consumer. And especially, you know, we talk about what we're going to focus on today. My stint led me to focus internally. So like Eric, I wanted to test those waters, say, what would it be like, you know, I can test my product management mettle. Can I build products that aren't for an external market and miss all the fun sexiness of, you know, that world and focus on internal product? And so my customers became internal people, and doesn't change a lot, and yet it changes everything at the same time. So I think that, you know, when we dive into this, who your customer is changes, you know, how we talk about some of this, but it makes that still all the more important. So I've had a diverse experience there, and I'm very excited, like Matt, to be part of this community and enjoy talking to everybody every week. So be here, be square, because you don't know what you're missing out on.
Absolutely. So cool. Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you, everybody. Let's get into it right now. So I want to start, and let me start with Anna. Actually, Anna, if you would tell us a little bit about you've touched on your interview practices as a whole, but how often, you know, tell us about your overall interview practices, both your personal and specifically what programs you put together at Paylocity.
Yeah, so I found that we were having trouble doing really good discovery at Paylocity, and we were a little bit too top down. We were trying to change that. And in order to change that, we really needed to fix our discovery process. And, you know, one of the kind of hallmarks of a good discovery process is talking to customers and talking to them on a regular basis. So really just started with that. And I put together kind of a mandate for my team. I have 18 people reporting up through me, and I asked them all, and I also committed to myself, and I made my managers commit to talking to at least 2 customers a week, and kind of did this whole presentation about why it was important, and gave them ways to easily set them up, like through Calendly and stuff like that. So tried to make the process a bit more efficient for my team to get them set up, and really just asking them to spend at least an hour a week talking to customers. And I think anyone can spend an hour a week. And if we can't, then, you know, there's probably bigger problems, but I think anyone can spare an hour. And so I asked them all to do that, but then we also get together each week. I have a routine every Tuesday afternoon where my entire team gets together and we talk about what we've learned from our customer conversations from that past week. So that's really fun because then we can share and learn from each other. We also document it in different places. And my team of 18 is just like a small part of our product org. So even just last week, I presented this plan to our entire product org at Paylocity, and we're really trying to roll it out to the other categories as well. So really hoping that this is going to spread like wildfire, and we'll be able to share even more. We created a new Slack group to share our learnings across the entire product org. So yeah, I think putting the routines together and really asking my team to commit, and also committing myself and telling them that that I'm spending this time. I think it's important for myself as well as the leader of the group. I think that was really important.
Great, thanks. And Eric, I was talking to the CTO at Aaron's the other day, and he was kind of giving me a little bit of hint about some of the things that you've done with Aaron's. And you've got a really unique business, or an uncommon business model in the first place. Tell us about how you're approaching the customer interviews at Aaron's.
Yeah, so my focus is, so Aaron's acquired BrandSmart USA a little while ago. So those are It's a regional retail store. I mean, I think of it as kind of Las Vegas and Marrakesh smashed together, and that it's just like a bazaar of. I think there's two in the Atlanta area. Again, I'm not in Atlanta, so
Yeah, there
I've
are.
only been to a few. Yeah, so there's two in Atlanta. There's 8 in South Florida. And so we acquired them a while ago, and I'm in charge of building out the leasing operations and the leasing program within there. So I'm not necessarily focused too much on the errands work at the moment. I'm really building this new business unit that we have. And so we get to do things quick because it's a small market size, right? There's thousands of errand stores and there's only 10 of our stores. So we get to do whatever we want and get to kind of be our own little innovation center within there. And so I'm working with a small team. Aaron's does run really lean in my product group. So my team is just, we've got 3 engineers and a designer and myself, which is fun because it's kind of everything that we need to get things done. And so we get to leverage existing technology as well, though, and kind of move into it. So we stood up a brand new business, which of course meant all the discovery of secret shopping and journey mapping and doing all that type of stuff. And then wanting to move into talking to as many customers as we can, because one thing that we learned quickly was this customer base is very different than the existing Aaron's customer base. And so a lot of our existing learnings about customers is wrong, right? When Aaron's is a lease to own operation, right? So when you step into an Aaron stores, you know you're going to be leasing your merchandise. When you step into BrandSmart USA, it's a retail experience and you're not necessarily sure that you're going to be leasing yet. And so we kind of have to discover that about you, and you need to discover that, and we need to take you on that journey as well. So there's a lot to learn. And so we just needed to talk to customers. And so one of the cool things is, because Corey is so product minded, he gets ideas and he's got a team to execute on them. And so I get to build off of stuff that's already been built. So we have an existing solution that's an in-house tool that we built that we call Acadia. And it's just a really interesting way for us to insert invitations for user interviews into all of our existing products. And so it's controlled by our UX team and us, our product team. We get to define kind of the criteria of what we want to go with. And then we have a bunch of APIs that we are hitting Calendly and are able to trigger modals and pop-ups, but are able to insert this kind of trigger natively into our applications. So we're able to solicit user interviews wherever we want. And so we've got the goal of our team. Again, I think the habits are important of talking to customers, because I've seen in my experience, you kind of realize you don't know anything about your customers, or realize you have a misconception about them. Then you're like, oh, I need to go talk to customers. And so then it becomes a big focus and you put a lot of effort into it, and you kind of do it in a spurt, right? Where you talk to 10 customers and you knock them all out. And by the time you talk to 3 of them, like, you're finding the same things and your kind of eyes are glazed over because you're just putting so much effort into, you got to put on your user interview voice. You've got to thank them for all of their feedback when they tell you that your product sucks, and you kind of just get used to it, and it doesn't mean the same. So I think the routine is important. So what we're trying to do right now is just talk to one customer a week on Friday from 10 to 12, and that's it. And we just want to we want to create the routine where it's no big deal, it's predictable, it's just what we do. Even if we don't have anything that we're trying to learn, we just talk to the customers. And so we're leveraging our technology stack that we have. Again, it's super awesome that I walked into an organization that believes in this and that already has the tools for me to be able to set this up. But that's what we're trying to do right now.
That's great. And one of the things that I heard you say there that really kind of struck me is you're able to build in the criteria of who you want to talk to as kind of part of this process. So you're embedding the invitations right there in your products and you're in your interface, and you're being very selective in an automated way about who you're inviting in the first place. So it sounds like this is a fairly new program. So how many invitations are you getting out there, and what's your take rate looking like?
Well, we're serving them to everyone that comes into it. So I can pick where in my, first off, we have a handful of products that the customers use for their interactions with us. So I can pick which product I want to show it to them, whether it's within our payment app or within our journey. we get to pick where we want, which product, where I want it to be in the journey, and then I can layer in demographic information as well right now. So what I'm interested in talking to people about right now is just their general overall flow through things. So when you come into a BrandSmart store, you're going to go through a kiosk application and kind of journey to be able to pay for your thing. So I'm inserting my invitations at the end of my transaction in the kiosk itself right there, because I want new customers that are going through that first journey. So what we're going to do is we're going to show it to everyone until we fill our slots, right? So if you walk in and I turn things on right now, we're showing, 3 weeks out of interview potential spaces, and we will continue to show those until they're filled. Once they're filled, then we'll turn it off and not have anyone see it. And this is all done automatically. We're just getting this out there in this new form where we're being really restrictive. So I'm not sure if it's going to work. But I figured, if my goal is a routine, I might as well start for like the perfect experience for my team. And then we'll open up from there, and we'll figure out whether or not we need to optimize where we're showing the invitation. If we need to optimize our reward for talking to us, we're not quite sure exactly how it'll play out, but we figured we'd start with what works for us first and then go from there.
Well, and you're initially starting with invitations to people who make it to a specific place in a journey, right?
Who have
that you already
completed the
understand.
transaction.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So that's pretty cool. So let's jump over here. So Lene, you're also in a retail space with Home Depot. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with, the role of UX researchers. Of course, we are not the designers, but we are the ones that are kind of like the bridging between, I need to talk to users with product and designers. And so part of my job is, and I was taking some notes here, like every quarter, every researcher on my team, and we are almost a team of 7, we execute like almost from 3 to 4 either discovery or usability research projects. And so that means that we're constantly talking to the user. So, and I don't know if maybe and it depends on the areas. Like there are some areas that of course they need more like customer interviews, and they need like more of that kind of like customer like feeling, like to empathize even more with the customers than others. And we understand that. But something that we've seen that it's critical when you are on the retail space and that you're meeting with the customers is make them feel comfortable. Like make them feel that they can tell you everything. So setting up the stage, it's something that it's vital. So for me, because I am the one that has to do the interviews, and my product managers, they are in the same meeting. I ask them, and maybe I'm going too deep onto like the other questions, but like I ask them to, stay on mute, do not turn on your cameras, because you don't want to intimidate the user. You want them to feel as comfortable as they can. And so, like I spent, I think, like 5 minutes of each interview just telling them who I am, what are we doing. They cannot do something wrong. This is about them. It's not about us. Like when you create your moderation guide, and this is something that I recommend, like if you're doing customers interviews, try to have a moderation guide. So you kind of like have and get familiar with the flow of the conversation and how to guide your user. So in my moderation guide, like I always try to set up the stage before I get into questions and ask them like questions on how to like getting to know them. So depending on the project that I am working in, I ask them, about their current, like if it's a DIY, or hey, tell me a little bit more about the project that you're working on. And maybe my interview and like my questions they don't have to do anything with the project that they're working on, but I want to build that confidence because they're talking to a total stranger. And I don't know if maybe like I'm Colombian, so I'm Hispanic. So for me, like maybe I have that advantage of like I make them, like I try to be like as natural as possible and like relatable and and sometimes even like making comments that they don't even go on the line of the interview, but it's just about making them feel that they can tell you everything. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much. And in terms of selecting who you're going to talk to, what process have you put in place to identify who you're going to actually speak with, or who you're at least going to invite? Yes.
Okay. So it's a combination of, since I am the person who has to recruit, and like I get in my role, I get the requirements from product and then UX. It's about how clear product managers are on like what's the goal of your product, what's the goal of the business. So if you have that clear, and I know it can be ambiguous sometimes, and like I have had, I sometimes it's like therapy with my product managers. I'm like, okay, cool. You don't know. What about these? Like this sounds like business goals, and so it's about really knowing what the business goals are, and then like using those business goals to set up research goals so that you know who to talk to. So it's about like not only like demographics and customer segmentations, but it's about what do you want to know. It's about like what are the goals, or how are you going to use the information that you're receiving from the customer? Is that information going to inform your roadmap? Is that information going to, I don't know, like be used just as, oh, I just want to know? And so like, depending on the use of the information and what are the goals of that interview, or that like research or discovery that you're doing, then that will drive who are you going to talk to. In that line, like screeners, if you are privileged to talk to having your team a UX researcher, I would say leverage that. And screeners is a huge part on talking to the right person. And I think that we never get like proficient on building screeners. I think it's something that it's ongoing because it changes, and it just you have to adapt them based on what you want to know from your customers. So like we have like some set of like screeners that we already have depending on the type of customers that we want, but also always try to like tweak them and then adapt them to your business goals, because otherwise you're gonna get information that like might be useful, but is it really going to affect your business decisions? So
very good. Great, thanks. So really being very particular about the outcome and the use of the information that you're going to gain from the interview helps you to design the right screener that helps you select the right customers. So you really think about, what am I going to do with the outcome and the insights that I gain from this particular set of interviews. Great, thank you. Holly, let's jump over to you, and would love to hear kind of your thoughts and how you approach customer interviews and choosing the right customers to talk to in the first place. You've been primarily in a B2B type of a mentality, even though you've been in financial services, back from credit unions that serve consumers. I think you've kind of got a pretty robust view. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've to your point, I've done both. I've done B2C and started my career there, and then I've done B2B and done some B2C and the B2B, and yeah, been all over. So it changes things, right, to your point, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't, like I was saying earlier. So a lot of great comments were made already, and Lenny, I was just nodding along with so many things you were just saying, but for me, I think, Eric, when you were talking about that, I've also had a product that I did not walk into, but we embedded an ability to do what you were describing, with the ability to, ping people, through the product, basically, with that opportunity to engage. And I think when asking customers is a great way that way that these are people who want to talk to you about the thing. But for me, like talking about the variation, right? I think when you're doing something like that, presenting it through a tool or an interface versus doing some sort of screening like Lenny was talking about, and deciding and from the product side, deciding the segment, the group that's aligned with the goal that you're trying to go after, which is so important. But if you're going to use an automated tool, you either need a screen after the fact for that, or look for how you prompt to get that from the tool. One thing that that I have done before is change where we're asking somebody a thing, right? Because I think for me, and I knew Teresa, Torres, for those that read Continuous Discovery, and yes, Manesh, I did read the book. You can stop that hate speech. But anyway, that he talks about, if you haven't talked to anyone, just talk to anybody, right? And I would absolutely advocate that. If you're not talking to customers right now, just talk to anybody. Dear God, help you, anybody, because they're probably a prospect, a target customer, right? And when we say customers, it doesn't have to be somebody who's using your product right now. But once you're doing that, one of the things I think that's easiest to end up not doing is getting that variation. You're talking to either the same customers over and over, or you're talking to, and I've seen this a lot, I've had to really struggle with my own teams with this, is you're talking into the same group, essentially the same segment, whether it's, I saw some chat, people talking about happy customers or unhappy customers, extremely active users or disengaged users. You want a mix of all of those things. If someone's using all the features of your product, great. Why? How is that valuable, right? If someone's using 1 or 2 features, that can be more compelling and tell you just as much, but you need all of that, right? You need to understand both of those pictures. So, I think, variation is something, key from my perspective, and looking at how you get that variation, right? Is it, something that you change where you're asking? Is it something you have to sit down and think about those personas, right? And separate the, this type of user from that type of user, the active versus the inactive. And then, actively, sorry, I'll use the word active here, go after, my high school English teacher in my head. It was my mother. But anyway, you have to go after those people, right? And figure out how you're going to get those. Also, I know I'm on a soapbox, so apologies, but I was intentionally separate, your different, talking about personas. I'm super passionate about, as you guys can tell, having those personas defined and making sure that you're going after different segments within that, and you're not just focused on basically the people who write the check. It's really easy, I think, for us as product people, right? We're tied to revenue, we're tied to product success and a bunch of metrics and North Star and all of that stuff. And a lot of times, right, at the end of the day, and that's not a bad thing, it's not a wrong thing, it ties to money. And so I see a great tendency, and I have struggled with this myself and caught myself going after the person who's writing the check. And that's who I want to talk to, because I want to keep them happy, right? Because I want to keep that money coming in so that I keep a job. But that's not where all the answers need to come from, right? The person who's writing the check probably isn't always the one using the tool. And if they are using your product, they're using it in a very specific way, right? So talking to other user segments, especially when you're talking about a B2B situation, right? Who's the person who's actually using this product every day? What are they using it for? How do they need it to work, right? Is very different from how their boss's boss's boss, who's technically, approving an invoice, needs things to happen.
Absolutely. I love that you called that out, because that is an important distinction, especially in B2B. It exists in B2C to a lesser degree sometimes as well. But the person who's buying and making that decision is not necessarily the person that you're going to get the great insights from about how to make the product better. And that gets back to Lene's comments around understanding, what do I want to get out of this conversation? What are the insights that I need to get to? Helps drive who I'm talking to. If I'm trying to understand outcomes that I need at a strategic level, then that's a senior, that's a CMO or a CFO conversation. But if I'm trying to understand what's the job that I'm trying to do in any given day, then that's a user conversation, and a really powerful filter to make sure that you're keeping in consideration. Thanks for bringing that out, Holly. And last but certainly not least, let's jump over here to Alex. Alex, you've been you've had a really fascinating career working with a lot of B2C and B2B organizations and B2B businesses within B2C organizations, and so on and so forth. Let's talk about your experience and kind of how you think about the customer interview process and how you select who you're going to talk to.
Yeah, I think what everyone has described, I'm like nodding my head. I'm like, yes, all those things are awesome. And maybe I riff on some of that. But if I were to distill the common themes that would happen across, B2C, B2B, I think what Lene said was awesome, right? What are our goals around this? What are we trying to achieve from an organizational level, but also from the user perspective as well? And we use those as a lens to create the context, right? Give us a focus area. And from there, if you're an established company, so I'm going to speak broadly a little bit, we're probably trying to optimize or build a new feature in a place. So we probably have a pretty good idea of where the usage is happening today. So that's going to help us even further focus on who we talk to, right? So as a PM, I should have a pretty good idea of who those people are in the segment of those people are. And if you're using tools like the one Eric had mentioned, oh my gosh, I wish I had that for most of the companies I worked with. Like, that's incredible. Like, I would be using that all the time. But not every company has the ability to do that. Like, high fives for y'all having that in place, and it's a custom tool. Like, that's incredible. So like using that to filter in and get that is awesome. So I think those are the things that commonly help. Well, I want to riff off of one thing that I found super helpful around personas and helping have like a guide and customer questions. A proto persona is a really good tool to use. So don't feel like you have to have a perfect persona in place, like you have to know everything about this group of people. Just start with something that often uncovers lots of assumptions that you have about the people you should be talking to, and that gets the conversation going. That gets you to inform your screener, your guide, and what behaviors you want to change with this solution. And it gets you to actually talk to people quick. And if you're wrong, you'll find out pretty quickly, right? And that's okay. Like, you could just stop it. That's the beauty of it. Apologize to some people or say thanks, but maybe later, and readjust. So I just wanted to add some of that, but I'm not sure what else to add there. I could keep going, but I feel like you all covered it really nicely in terms of like the overall approach.
Very good. So yeah, once again, the automating the process, the select and understanding the outcome is really key to kind of some of the best practices that you're focused on.
Yeah, it'll help you focus and uncover who you actually need to talk to. That's what I find. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. So so that's great. So thanks. Those were kind of some long introductory dig-ins, but I had I saw a couple of questions, and actually and I want to welcome anybody who is on the call and would like to jump in and ask a question directly. If there's something that's really important to you to cover, feel free to raise your hand. I'll call you to the front and we can kind of go a little bit deeper. Or if you've still got a question that you want to make sure that we touch on, just put a Q : in front of your question here in the chat, and I'll try to get to it if you don't want to ask it yourself. So just let me know what you'd like to do there, and we'll pull people in. But I saw a question come up in the chat that was a really interesting question, and around context and how you're going to do the interview, where you're going to conduct the interview, and does that affect who you talk to? So if you're going to do an in-person interview versus a phone interview versus a Zoom interview, for each of you, real quickly, and I think it's probably a fairly short answer, does that affect how you who you target in the first place, or is it really just more of an interview style change?
I guess I'll jump in, Jason. I guess I think of it maybe flipped, and I think I may have brought this up in a previous conversation on customer interviews, right? Because the who is super important. I don't think gets enough attention. So I'm so glad we're having this talk today. But sometimes the how you need to do a session is, in my experience, more effective in different formats for that who. There are people that I knew specifically I had to go after and get their feedback as a customer, whether it was, because they were engaged, disengaged, whatever, right? They were a key player, a key person that we needed feedback from, but I knew Zoom wasn't going to be a format that was going to work for them. And sometimes, if they'll get out of your building, sometimes that's true for your customer as well. So I would also urge people to, in a world where it's so easy to set up a Zoom, and I'm not dogging a Zoom. We're sitting on one right now, right? They're awesome. And it gives you great advantages about transcripts, recordings, and all of these things we talked about are so important, I think, to really capture the conversations you can go back to later, without your own, head playing at the same time. But don't disvalue the need some people have for an in-person conversation, and also for them to not be in their building at the time that you're having the conversation. Depending on what it is, obviously, what you need to find out, like to Alex's point, what are you trying to learn? is super important, but there's going to be things sometimes that you want to learn and that you want them to truly be able to give you totally candid, honest feedback, and realize that if they're sitting in their office, they possibly can't do that, especially in a B2B situation. So sometimes getting your customer out and actually saying, hey, so we're going to do this in person, and hey, why don't we, do this, as a lunch, or let's go grab a coffee. I'll meet you here, and yes, then the incentive can be that you're going to buy their coffee, but you don't have to lead with, hey, free Starbucks. But, whatever you need to do, but sometimes I flip it and I think of the format based on that who and how am I going to get the best information from them.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Have a different perspective?
I had a
Yeah. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I just back to Holly. I put it in the chat, but again, I back to Lenny. I took about 9 UX classes, so I sympathize with you. But one of the things I've learned, at least in those, is again back to the get out of the building. I think it's don't go into an interview room, and I think it sounds like we're focused on conversation here, but it's also environment. And I think you could be in their building, but not in their environment. And I think that again, and it's not just asking questions; it's observing. And I think really paying attention to the environment, I think, adds another level of insight. Possibly, that's all I want to make.
Very good.
Yeah, I was going to ask,
you're
in a remote first world where you have customers you're working with that are on site on a daily basis, what are some ways to get them out of the building, so to speak? Even if you're not like getting them physically out of the building, how do you get them in the mindset to where they just forget about what's going on in them and you create a conversation and a mood that just draws them into wanting to engage with you deeper on what, the topic that you're looking to learn about?
I think when we hear get out of the building, it means we get out of the building, not getting your user out of the building, right? So it's like we're actually going to where they are, we're observing, we're hanging out with them, we're getting contextual research, and maybe we get an opportunity to like set them aside and go a little bit deeper and get their perspective. So that's what, when you hear get out of the building, that's the intent of it. But like the root of this, like, I think the question was like, what changes between remote and like in person? It's like logistics to me, right? It's getting them comfortable in whatever it is. So if it's remote, it's like giving them all the right links, making sure things work for them. If it's in person, setting expectations up front, like who's going to be there, that we're going to be recording either video or voice recorder, like if they're cool with that. So it's just getting them comfortable. I think Lene had mentioned that as a generalization, and I think that's good.
But getting back to your original point,
I said this in the chat. I totally agree, Alex. My main point is for us to get out of the building, but I gave that far-reaching example of a customer may need to get out of their building. Matt, this may fall into your space as well, but anyone who builds products that touch regulatory things, realize that that's a thing, right? If your customer cannot have a conversation because you're trying to delve into why do you need to do this or how does this need to work, and there's a 10-year prison sentence for them admitting that they're not doing that effectively today, they're not going to give you real answers. So there are times that you do need to think about your customers need to get out as well. That's my point.
Yeah, I like that. Just engaging with them directly and observing what they do. Sometimes it's just the nonverbal stuff that can really tell us a lot.
You have to have both if you can, right? Like what people say and what people do are very different. So we need some mix of behavior to inform what we do and what we build.
Thanks for sharing that, Alex.
I like your comment, Alex, about contextual, because we used to do in durable goods, we'd go out and watch people shop. And the way they interact with the product is just as important as which one they select in order to make that decision. So their state of mind, the environment, all that other stuff is as important as what they think their opinion is.
I also want to
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I also wanted to jump in and saying that, you know, I think it's better when we're thinking in that direction, it's better to think about like we want to learn from the customer, and learning from the customer has different phases and can look very different. So learning from the customer can look like you're observing. And so if you work with a UX research team, then we can do a diary study. But then learning from the customer can look like, oh, you want to talk to them and asking questions. So then that looks like an interview. And also, you know, like with the getting out of the building and all of that, I think it also depends on who your customer is. And again, what are your goals? What are you trying to learn? Because like for me, I can go to Home Depot stores, but my experience, I work like only on the online experience. So it's all like the e-commerce side of things. And yeah, I can go to the store, but am I going to be learning what I need to learn from my customer? Like my limitation then only will be customers in Atlanta. What about customers like in other parts of the US? So I think that, you know, when you really kind of like hone down into what do you want to learn, you will even start thinking like, oh my gosh, maybe I need an automatized tool that I think Holly like also mentioned, and I might need, just to mention one, like I might just need to ask my organization to give me access to user testing. That's one of the tools that we use, because you want to recruit, you know, people all over the US. And I remember one time that I was talking to one customer of mine, and she was telling me like, you know, if you give me this type of recommendation, for me it's gonna be useless because I live here up north. And so how are you guys thinking about whatever you're recommending? And I'm like, that's such a good point, because depending on like the context of your customer, then it all depends. Like I think it's everything. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Lene. So we are about to need to start wrapping up, and I wanted to kind of shift gears here for just a moment. One of the things that I asked from all of our panelists to do is to think ahead. Excuse me. And there are a couple questions here in the chat that I want to come back to, but I want to make sure that we can actually wrap at the top of the hour, and then we'll come back to some additional questions if we have time in kind of an after party. So stick around after the end, and we'll keep going for a few more minutes, but for everyone who can. But I asked each of you to give us a little bit of advice that you would share with product managers as you're thinking about mastering customer interviews and research. What advice would you give to the product managers who are thinking about that specific challenge? And I want to start with you, Anna.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think the biggest thing is to make it a habit, because if I'm really big on habits and routines. Routines really help me. So I think just making it a habit and doing it every single week, it becomes super easy. It becomes kind of second nature. And it just allows you to continuously get that feedback that you need, just ongoing, constantly.
Excellent. Thank you. And how about you, Lene?
So analytics and data can give you very good answers, and maybe analytics and data can give you, because I've seen like sometimes product managers rely so much on the analytics rather than like doing customers interviews and talking to customers. However, there's a powerful combination between analytics and UX, because analytics can tell you the what and UX can tell you the why. So my big piece of advice, when talking to customers and getting to know from them, it's trying to combine both, and not only keeping, assuming that the voice of the customer is what analytics say.
Very good. And so let me pivot over here to Alex. I'm going to ask you the same question. So if you're thinking about a piece of advice for product managers who are thinking about mastering customer interviews and research, what advice would you give, Alex?
Just do as many interviews as you can. If you've got UX researchers, great. Leverage them, hang out with them, invite other members of your team. If you don't, do it yourself. Do it with your designer and other people that are part of your team that can take notes. Make it a habit, like I think Holly was saying, right? I love to use the discovery backlog as the trigger to get in front of people, right? Here's our next big thing that we're trying to do. And it just falls after that.
Discovery backlogs. I love that. Let's see. Eric Rolfson, what advice would you give to product managers who are trying to master the customer interview and research process?
I mean, I think it's the habits, right? And not to be precious about it, right? I know that we're talking a lot about in-person versus Zoom versus phone. With my customer segment right now, with my demographic, like a lot of my customers are calling into the Zoom while they're in their car driving, right? Like you've just got to take what you can get. And by having everything thrown at you, you're going to get better at it, right? So like if you have a specific goal that you're after, awesome. If you can be perfect, or you've got your user interview script written out and you've got exactly the slice that you're trying to get, where you know exactly where in the journey you're going to serve the invitation, you know what your user demographic is, and you're fully filtered out and you're going to talk to the perfect customer, awesome. That's great. But also if it's Friday and you do have someone that wants to talk to you and you don't know what you want to talk to them about, just shoot the shit with them. And like, they're going to tell you something that they don't like or that they do like. So just do it, right? And try and shift it to get your whole team to do it, right? Like if you have UX researchers, great, but don't rely on just them to do it, right? Especially if you have them coach your engineers on how to give an interview. We have a rotating expectation on my team that we all take the interviews and lead the interviews, each of us. And my lead engineer always tries to duck out of it, and we have to rib him until he's able to do it. And then he does it and we kind of group shame him, but like have everyone do it and just like keep banging through them till you get comfortable with it. And then that's how you master something, is by messing it up.
So is your advice to shame people into conducting interviews, or to just do a lot of them and force yourself out of your comfort zone?
To get out of your comfort zone and to use group dynamics to force other people out of their comfort zone as well.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah.
And and Holly, what's your parting advice for product managers who are thinking about mastering their customer interviews and research?
Yeah, awesome. To try to not repeat so many great tips that came from the rest of this amazing panel that I was honored to be a part of here. And I think for me, and I realize that this sounds very trite in today's world, that you hear it all over the place, right? But be yourself, right? Be yourself when you're talking to your customers. You know, we talk in some conversations, you know, Lenny, I know in the UX researcher space, that's why you may want multiple people in a conversation, so that you can, you know, have that separation and be, you know, not a robot, but be very, you know, formal and kind of keep emotion and things out of it. But for your customers, if you're on the product side of things, you need to have that relationship. And I think that the truest feedback comes when people know that you know, and you don't have to bribe them. If you're reaching out and talking to them and they want to build that relationship, they want to tell you their story, but be yourself, and you'll be amazed the things that people will open up and tell you. And I loved Eric, you know, point sometimes, and I'm, you know, yes, have a thing you want to talk about, but just because you don't have something new and exciting to talk about isn't a reason to not talk, right? Because sometimes I've also can say I've learned the most compelling things by just having a conversation where I was like, no, and then
you went quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going, oh God, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Oh dear. You know, but that can lead you to the most compelling truths and the most important discoveries that you'll have, that maybe a whole new product that needs to be built. And you didn't even know that was a problem that they had, that they needed, until you start shooting as Eric says, shooting the shit. So, you know, there you go. Screen that out later. Have fun.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your time on the panel and in the discussion today. I want to thank once again Eric, Lene, Alex, Holly, and Anna for bringing a great discussion around choosing the right customers to interview in the first place. I want to remind everyone as well that we are starting our book club, our new book club on product roadmaps relaunched on this Friday, March 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Go over to productcoffee.com/book club to join that. and would love to have you be a part of that group read and discussion. I see we've got another recommendation from Kristen on a book to read. We'll drop that in the notes as well. Make sure that you get over the notes document. We had a discussion emerge around proto personas. I went and, in line with our earlier conversation, I used ChatGPT to pull together some really quick information and an overview on proto personas with some references. I haven't validated anything in the output, but I dropped that in the notes document for you as well. Take a look at it, and be interesting to see some additional commentary in the notes document for those who were here for that discussion as well. Would love to hear from you. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming to Product Coffee today. We'll be back next week with Diane Bowman talking about Customer Spotlight and bringing your insights into your team and your organization to help more people learn from the discoveries that you're making as you're interviewing customers. And that will wrap for today's official program. But if anybody wants to stick around for a couple of minutes, I did have a question that we'll come back to. So I'm going to stop the live stream. Be sure and join us live next time. Go over to productcoffee.com and register for our mailing list so that you know about every event that we have. And we will see you next week at Product Coffee. Thanks.